Professor Caroline Pott heads the Laboratory of Experimental Neuroimmunology at Lausanne University Hospital in Switzerland. Professor Pott, your work is at the forefront of understanding the gut-brain axis in MS. Some of our listeners may not be familiar with that connection, so I'm hoping you can explain how the trillions of microbes in our gut can have such a profound influence on an autoimmune disease happening in the brain and spinal cord.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation and for the question. Indeed, the gut-brain axis is a very important one. It goes in both directions, right? You have an impact from the brain to the gut. So if I'm stressed when I answered your question, I might have butterfly in my gut. But on the other side, you also have the impact from the gut to the brain. And there are several pathways. I mean, there are neuronal pathways, but there are also the gut flora. And the gut flora is probably also secreting some metabolites or some factors or signals that will impact several parts of the immune response. It can impact directly the immune cells. You can also have a leaky gut, so a gut that is more permeable, and then you have more signal. And then it goes, those factors that are secreted by the gut can also directly impact the blood-brain barrier and directly also some cells in the brain, in the central nervous system. So what do we know in MS, in multiple sclerosis? Now I think it has been shown in several studies that you have a dysbiosis. That means that the intestinal flora is not the same if you have MS or if you don't have MS. And it seems that it's also very important. You can transfer the susceptibility of a disease to mice if you just transfer the feces. So it's not only a consequence, but it can have a causal role. And there are several lines of research to understand how it works and what is the cause and how it functions. In my lab, we use animal models, but we also always ping pong with the clinics. So we think that bacteria secrete some metabolites, so some small protein, and those small proteins can impact also the immune response.
Well, I want to circle back to those metabolites in just a moment. But first I want to ask, the conversation often focuses on diet, but I'm wondering, do other lifestyle factors like stress or sleep or exercise have any impact on this gut-brain communication?
Yeah, I mean, it's not only diet. For example, smoking. So when people ask about diet, we forgot always to ask about smoke. So if you smoke cigarette, it completely changes your microbiome. And it probably makes it in a more pro-inflammatory status. And we know that dysbiosis and smoke can also promote progression in multiple sclerosis. So I would say diet, but also smoke. If you exercise, so it has also been shown that exercise probably also impact your gut flora. So it's not only diet. I think it's the global lifestyle, and that you have to take everything in account to have a healthier gut, but also a healthier brain.
As you were mentioning, your research has specifically highlighted how metabolites like short-chain fatty acids produced by gut bacteria can modulate immune cells. Can you walk us through what that process is? How does a molecule produced from dietary fiber in the colon end up telling an immune cell in the body to be less inflammatory?
Yeah, so it's a very complicated story, and I think there's not only one pathway or one metabolite, but you have to look at, well, we can start with animal models, right? If you remove completely the microbiome in a mice, so you can do it in a germ-free mice, you put in the mice in a completely germ-free environment, or you can also give the mice antibiotics. So if you give a mice antibiotics, you will decrease the diversity of the microbiota, and then you can look at what is secreted. And what we found, so we have a model, so not every immune cells is important in the gut, but we found that certain subset of T cells, so CD4 T cells, that we call Th17 cells, but it's not very important, have a propensity to go in the gut. And if you take animal models, so you can take Th17 cells that are only specific to your brain. They should go to your brain, but actually they first go to your gut. And then we try to see what happens if you remove the microbiota or if you leave the microbiota in. And we showed that when you don't have microbiota, actually you don't educate the Th17 cells, and then you're protected from the neurological diseases in animal model. And then we try to find what was different in the stools, in the feces of those mice, and we found we could analyze those small little proteins that we could metabolite, and we could see that when we have or not flora, it changes, and then we could identify those and try to test them on T cells in culture. And so the small chain fatty acid, one pathway that is important, has been shown in different studies that if you give a mice a short chain fatty acid, then you have a less severe disease, but also probably in humans that if you give those short chain fatty acid, you have more regulatory T cells. And we found that also not only short chain fatty acid, but the tryptophan derivative. I mean, tryptophan is an essential amino acid that you can find in the food. If you don't have it, you cannot survive. But when it's also metabolized by bacteria in the gut, and it can lead to derivatives that can be pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. So it's a very complex system.
But a really fascinating one. You know, many people living with MS are excited by the idea that diet can make a difference, but they often find themselves facing confusing advice about what diet might make the most sense for them. Now, while there isn't a single MS diet, what are the most evidence-based dietary principles or patterns, such as intake of fiber or types of fats? What do you believe hold the most promise for positively influencing the gut microbiome and immune health in people with MS?
So it's a challenging question for everyone. I don't think, as you said, as you mentioned, there is not an MS-specific diet. There is no miracle diet. But what has been shown is that a healthy diet has been associated with less pain, less depression, less fatigue. And what is a healthy diet? Well, a healthy diet is to eat more fruits, more vegetables, less red meat, less fat, less sugar, more probably fish. And if you look at this, you go more in the direction of Mediterranean diets. So if you look at most of those diets, Mediterranean diet, Kuzmin diet, Paleo diet, you also enrich in fruits and fibers probably also. So what I would say is don't go into difficult diets like gluten-free diet, lactose-free diet, because this has not been fully showed that it was really positive. But if you try to eat healthy and remove those ultra-processed food, fast food, and you go back to the roots in a way, and if you look at Mediterranean diet, it's what you do, right? You have more antioxidant, olive oils, fruits, vegetables, then you already do a lot of good things for your brain, for your gut also.
I'm going to ask you to briefly gaze into your crystal ball now. Are we moving more toward a future of personalized nutritional therapy based on an individual's unique microbiome profile, or maybe even postbiotic treatments that provide beneficial metabolites directly, bypassing the need for specific bacteria? Looking ahead, what do you see?
Well, that would be a dream situation. I think we are far from this, but we are getting a direction of a personal medicine from lifestyles to also treatment. I think we really have to combine everything. But I think already if we tell everyone to eat healthy and have exercise and not to smoke, then you can already treat or help many person with their symptoms without having a very personalized treatment. But I think probiotic, postbiotic, prebiotic are very interesting, but we need some more studies to look at them. And it's probably cheaper just to eat a healthy lifestyle than to start to buy too many supplements or postbiotics. I think today we don't have enough evidence, but probably in the future we will.
It sounds like very good advice. Well, Professor Pot, I want to thank you for all you do to make life better for people who are living with MS today and in the future. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes to talk with me.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation.
This conversation was made possible through a generous grant from Sanofi.